Welcome back to MMA Sucka Fight fans. My name is Nate Freeman. I'm joined today by Glory Watson, who's competing next Saturday, February 11th in NEF against Hilarie Rose. Glory, how you doing today?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm fantastic. So like I mentioned, you're competing at the next NEF event, New England Fights, against Hilarie Rose. Now, as many people may know, you've competed against her in a kickboxing bout.
Mhm.
Talk to me about maybe some things that you learned in that fight. Obviously, kickboxing is different from MMA, but what are some things that you picked up on her as an opponent during that fight that you hope to bring into the cage next Saturday?
So that is kind of a difficult question to answer because it is a completely different sport. When you go into a kickboxing gym, what you're going to see is 100% different than what you're going to see if you went into an MMA gym. So there are bits and pieces about maybe like the way she moves her shoulders that would be similar, the way she moves her hips for her kicks, which will be similar. But all in all, it is so different. It's hard to be like, I know she's going to do this because she did it before. So I've taken it when we did it, she was a last minute fill in. An opponent I had gotten COVID. And we knew it was going to be a really tough fight because Hilarie is very established in the local martial arts community. So took the fight knowing it was going to be hard, and I think just used it as kind of a glorified sparring session. It was a time to get in there with someone with a lot of experience and kind of test myself and in a sport that I wasn't comfortable with. So now looking back, I don't pick up on certain things. I just want us to go forward with the MMA side of things because I think it's going to be a lot different.
That makes sense. And you mentioned that Hilarie is well established in the regional MMA scene. She's fought on LFA, CFFC, and obviously the Contender Series as well. One step away from a UFC contract. So, what does getting a win over someone with a name like that mean to you? And maybe what are your goals for this fight and in the future?
So the getting a win over someone that has an established record is something that I think is important for any fighter that's looking to do something with this. I think oftentimes, or not often, but sometimes people will fight people with lesser records or things like that, and it makes their records look fantastic. But there's only so much that you can only test yourself so much against that caliber opponent. Whereas someone with a very established name like Hilarie, it's easy to tell that she is established in this community. And that in itself makes the fight, whether you win or lose, as long as you perform, it makes it a lot more special, in my opinion. So the ultimate goal for me is to make it to the UFC. I want to be the champion. That's what I think. If you're into this sport, that's what everybody wants. Um, and so this is kind of that next step up. She is a step up in competition because of her accolades and the things she's done already.
Along similar lines, since we are still relatively new into the new year, what is your goal for the year? Obviously, your first goal is to win the fight and move past that. But what maybe this time next year, where do you see yourself?
Um, I that again, that's another hard question for me personally. Visualization is something that I struggle with a lot. I think I kind of just picture myself pushing forward, whether that is I've been signed to the UFC and I'm training for a fight in Vegas, or I am training for a fight in my hometown, like hometown again. Um, for me, it all I think if I put too much pressure on myself and I'm like, I'm gonna be here, I'm gonna do this, then when those things don't happen, I feel like it makes things difficult. So I think having like a long-term goal is really important, and having those tiers that build up to it. So I guess I would say that within the next year, my goal is to make my mark, kind of do something that's going to make me stand out, make me special, and get the call up.
And obviously, that starts with your fight on Saturday.
Mhm.
Um, Talk to me about maybe some things that you've been working on in training camp to better yourself and be the best Glory Watson that you can be on Saturday.
I think that something that gets neglected a lot when talking about the fight game is the mental side of things, is because anyone can go into the gym and learn to throw a punch. It takes it. Soccer moms do it. Anyone can do it. But to be the type of person that can learn how to throw a punch, know how to take a punch, not be affected by that, and all of these things takes something really special. And for me, that is what I've been trying to grow, is trying to increase my mental training, for lack of a better way to put it, to become the best mental athlete I can, because I think that's something that's really overlooked. This is arguably the hardest sport in the world, and not just physically but mentally as well. You're fighting yourself and you're fighting your opponent, and it's not like football where you get a full season. You get one moment to prove yourself or to perform to your fullest. So the mental side of things is really what I've been focused on probably for the last year or so, because I think it's invaluable in this sport.
Absolutely. You mentioned obviously the mental, excuse me, part of fighting. I know that you've talked about in the past maybe struggling with some different things mentally in terms of like body image issues and self-esteem and things like that. How have you worked through that, and how does that come into play at all? I'm sure it does when you step into the cage, or is that something you sort of block out when you step into the cage, or where are you on that?
Yep. So I have had self-confidence issues since I was a little kid. My sisters are all like really petite. And I mean, I'm also a small girl, but compared to them, I'm much bigger. So you see these little tiny girls all the time, and that's what you expect. That's what, like, oh, I'm supposed to look like that. And so that was really hard for me for a long time. And now that I've gotten older, and especially the things that I'm able to do now, I still don't particularly look at myself and be like, wow, she is beautiful. Like, I don't really think that, but I look at myself and I can see that I'm an athlete, that the way my body is built is made for this sport. I carry my weight all in the center, which is great for wrestling. I have really long arms, which is great for striking. So for this sport, I'm built exactly how I need to be. And in the cage, when I first started fighting, I wore a t-shirt. I fought in a t-shirt because I was very self-conscious. It's usually my midsection that bothers me the most. And then as I continued to fight, I went from a t-shirt to a cutoff to a tank top, and then I went to a sports bra. And I think the evolution of my career and building confidence in what I can do physically as a fighter has made it so I'm a little less worried about it. I'm not worried about what people are thinking. I'm not worried that people are like, oh, look at her stomach. I don't really think that anymore, because I have more things working in my favor that draw attention away from that. And I feel really positive about the way that I'm able to perform without thinking about my body image. So it's
Yeah,
still
that makes
there. It's still there, but
and that's why to my knowledge, why you got started in MMA to begin with was to sort of combat those issues. So talk about that a little bit more.
yep.
Why you got started in MMA?
Yeah. So I got started, I think a little over 6 years ago. I was in a relationship. I've been in a relationship for about a year, and everyone gets, that comfortable in a relationship, and you start just spending time at home and you're eating whatever you want and you put on weight. When I first walked into the gym, I was a little over 170 pounds. As a girl who's 5'2", 170 pounds is very heavy. So I kind of started looking for an outlet and something to kind of get me back in shape. And the very first day I was in the gym, I did a class, and coach comes up to me and goes, have you ever done this before? And I was like, no. He goes, well, he told me like I have a lot of potential. And that was just like sparked this fire to want to do this. And the weight loss was just kind of an added benefit, but I fell in love with the actual sport. So it's just been this crazy wild journey of going up in weight and down in weight and learning things and unlearning things and everything. So the sport is just unparalleled to anything else I've ever done.
You couldn't have imagined being in this position. I know you've spoke to other people and said that you still don't see yourself as a fighter or as an MMA fighter until you walk into the cage. I think that's really interesting. Um, so along those lines, what maybe would you? I know that you also coach, and that's your full time gig along with being a fighter. But if you weren't doing this, what exactly would you be doing? Do you think?
That is a difficult question. I'm kind of one of those people. It's like jack of all trade, master of none. Um, I would say more than likely, if I were not actively fighting, I would run a meal prep business or a bakery. Um, weird. I love food, and I'm in a sport that we have to deprive ourselves. But I really enjoy it. I think it speaks my language, and I like being able to express myself through food.
Yeah, and I saw some of those pictures on your social media about like the cakes and stuff that you've made for like your sister's engagement party and different things for your family and things like that. And they look fantastic. Oh my goodness. So how did you maybe get into doing that? Obviously, you love food, but how did you find out that you had a talent for making food?
Um, I guess it's something that's I wouldn't say that I was like one day like I can do this. I remember like being young and cooking dinner and baking a lot with my grandparents, and it was something that was like the exciting part, going over there be like, "Can we make cupcakes today? Can we do this today?" And I think that my grandparents, my grandmothers in particular, really influenced me in that regard, and they influenced me a lot in my life. So I think it's something that I view as very special. I like seeing people happy, like when they like take a bite of something, and like seeing people like, wow, that is so good. I really enjoy that. And I think I get that from my grandparents.
Yeah, nice. And I saw that you did that with your nephew as well. Started sort of moving that tradition down a little bit. So, and I know that you spend a lot of time with him and love him very much. So, shout out to your nephew, and also shout out to Harrison. Oh my goodness, that dog is massive.
Yeah.
What made you? I feel like you have to be a certain type of person to get a dog that big, like he's a Great Dane. Talk to me about what made you decide to get Harrison as a dog, and then I know that you have two other pets as well.
Yes. So I was living with my fiance at the time, and I had always wanted a Great Dane for as long as I can remember. My aunt had them when I was growing up, and I was like, I love them. They're just so big and floppy, and I love their lips. And so one day I was like sitting there scrolling through Facebook, and a local breeder that I followed was like, "Oh, family fell through on this poor little guy. Anybody interested?" And I showed him to my fiance, and we're like, "Yep, let's do it." So it was a little bit impulsive. But we brought him home and fell in love with him. He's big and stupid and sometimes too smart, but most of the time way too dumb. But he's a really good dog. But I think people have to remember that it is a dog, and there's only so much we can do to combat their natural instincts. So I think it is really important to understand that a big dog is like, compared to me, he is much taller than me. He's about the same weight as me. If something were to happen, I have to have the ability to control him. And I think that people sometimes forget that. And there was an incident where my dog Harrison bit another dog, and it was my responsibility to control my dog. And I was lucky that I have martial arts training, because I was able to actually choke my dog unconscious to avoid any further altercations. And he's a good boy. It was just the situation was
Things
not
happen, yeah,
ideal. Things
yeah.
happen, yes. So just it's really important to know the size of your dog. like you said, like it's a big dog. It takes a special kind of person to have a dog like that. And I think it takes a special kind of person to have any breed of dog. All breeds of dogs have their own special little thing that they need. And so just do your research before you get a dog.
Yeah, you said sometimes too smart, sometimes too dumb. I feel that with my own dog. I feel like sometimes she is just so smart, and like she'll know, like, if we're going to a certain place, like she already knows it and different things like that. But then sometimes she's so dumb, like she'll just sort of like run into walls and stuff. It's so weird. But yeah, I love her to death. But you also have a lizard, is that correct?
I actually have 3 now.
Oh my.
Yes.
Yeah, so talk about that. My goodness. I like I said about your dog, and it takes a certain type of person to have lizards as well. That I know you love animals, but I feel like that's a bit I don't know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's different. It's very
Yeah.
different. It's not something that everybody has. Um, I when I was right out of high school, um, I got a snake and a water dragon. Um, my snake was blind, so he really struggled with just about everything. So I spent a lot of time really caring for him, and I liked the learning that came along with that. There were a lot of adjustments that had to be made to kind of allow him to live, more or less. And then I grew up a little bit, started doing my thing, and I was like, you know what? I want another reptile. And I was doing research and saw a bunch of articles about blue tongued skinks being arguably the best pet reptile. And now that I have one, I 100% agree. It's literally just this potato that sits in your hand with these little tiny legs. It's the best. Um, and then I have a Savannah monitor, which she is about this big right now. And when she's full grown, she'll be between 2 and 4 feet. So she's going to be a big lady. And then, weirdest one of my good friends, her aunt travels back and forth from Florida to Maine. Excuse me, Florida to Maine. She's a snowbird. So she has her plants that she brings with her and brings back. And she brought one of her plants home and she looked in it and there was an anole in the plant. So she's like, I don't know what to do with it. I don't want to kill it. So they put it in a little critter keeper. And my friend Katie had the reptile for a while, and she's like, "We're gonna be leaving for our honeymoon. Will you watch him?" I'm like, "Yeah, of course." And she's like, "Do you want to just keep him?" I'm like, "Sure." She's like, "Can I still get visitation?" I'm like, "Of course you can still visit your reptile." So it's I enjoy it a lot. It's just kind of a different hobby that requires certain attentions, but less so than like a per se a dog. Because a dog would be difficult for me to have in my apartment right now.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. And then lastly, you have a cat as well. So then I guess rounding out the trio, talk to me about
She's
um
right here. Let me get it.
yeah.
Oh, I scared her. Come here, little kitty. Yeah, this is Susan. Susan. She's very grumpy. She doesn't particularly like to be held. I've had her for 9 years, something like that.
Oh my goodness.
She'll be 13 this year, so she's an old lady now. But she's kind of been with me through a lot, and I love her.
Yeah,
Back.
how much training did it take for Harrison to get along with Susan?
I had Susan when we first got Harrison, so Harrison as a puppy was really exposed to her. So he chased her around every once in a while, but I mean that's what dogs and cats do. But he was always really good with her.
Fantastic. Okay, so really quick, we're gonna shift gears a little bit. I want to do a few rapid fire questions,
Ooh, I'm
um,
ready.
and just sort of get to know you a little bit better. What is your favorite book or movie?
Ooh. I will say the Lord of the Rings series, the movies. I haven't read the books. I have them and I haven't read them. I know Tolkien fans are gonna tear me apart for that one, but
Yeah, that's a lot of my friends say that too. And I'm still about halfway through it. So I need to finish it, and what I've seen, I've enjoyed it, but yeah, I just need to finish it. They're so long.
They are
Um,
so long. You got to be ready to sit down for it.
yeah, and then I think that's part of it is that I just am sort of going a lot and
Yeah.
don't. Yeah. Um, anyway, so what is your favorite striking technique?
Ooh. Can't say I have one in particular, but I would say I like kicks. Maybe. I like
Okay.
punches too. I like it all. I like it all. I'm in for everything.
Yeah, yeah. Then go into the ground. What is either your favorite submission or favorite position on the ground or whatever?
Uh, people, I get that one a lot, and I always just say the first submission that I ever got. It was my very first fight. It was my first submission was an arm triangle or like a head and arm choke. So I always say that one. Just it has a special spot in my heart.
That's fun. Yeah. Okay. Who are some of your favorite fighters?
Um, I would say so. I'm like openly will admit I'm terrible about knowing like UFC fighters, like their roster, nothing. I'm very bad at it. I don't typically watch the UFC fights. It's a rarity that I do. When I do, I enjoy them. I think like you, I'm just very like go, go, go all the time. Um, but in terms of fighters that I guess I like maybe their style or their attitude, I would say probably I like TJ Dillashaw's style. Um, uh, Corey Sandhagen, I like his application of his jab, very nice. And then I really like Rose Namajunas. I think she did something amazing, being so young and battling through what she did. So I I also have an appreciation for her. And it's hard because I have such an appreciation for everyone in this sport. The sacrifices that you make to get to the top or to get to wherever you are are really, it's hard to compare to anything if you haven't done it. I know that like missing out on family events, not being able to have a bite of cake at your nephew's birthday party and like things like that. It's little things that it it is a lot of sacrifice. So everyone in this sport, even high tier, low tier, anyone that goes through this and sacrifices those things, really, I have an appreciation for.
Um, what what would you say, looking back? What's your message to yourself as you're getting into MMA?
Um, I it was I've been asked this question twice recently, and I hadn't been asked it before this, so it's kind of hard to think about. It's very emotional for me, but I have been training with a gentleman in southern Maine who has had a pretty extensive professional career, and he had an amateur career as well. And he was discussing with my coach kind of the same type of thing. And coach asked him, like, what would you tell yourself if you could go back and when you first started fighting? And what he said, I think, really resonated with me. And it's something that I think it's what I would say to myself as well, and that's just like, you are good enough. It doesn't matter what you've gone through. It doesn't matter the hardships that happen every single day. You're here and what you're doing, you are good enough. And I think everyone needs to hear that sometimes.
Yeah, I was gonna say along those lines. I was gonna ask maybe your message to people who have experienced similar issues to you with body image and with self confidence issues. But I feel like you sort of hit the nail on the head there. Is there anything you want to add though?
Um, I guess I would just say that don't, it's not about what other people think. It's about what you think. So if you're not comfortable, change it. And yes, that's hard. Sounds super easy. Just be like, just do better. But there's small little things that can change. And I think that with time and energy, anyone can be whatever they want to be. Whether that just means being comfortable in your own skin. I'm not saying you have to diet and lose weight or diet to put on weight, depending on how you feel, but learning to find confidence within yourself, which I think, like I mentioned before, the mental side of things is what really changed it for me.
Yeah, yeah. How much are you thinking about cereal right now?
A lot. A lot. I really cereal, and I really I went through a bulking phase. And during it I was eating a lot of cream of rice. So I want a big bowl of cream of rice with peanut butter and blueberries and cinnamon. Don't
Mm.
know why, but I want it real bad. But cinnamon is like my thing right now. I would put cinnamon on anything and I don't know why. I'm just about it.
My dad he always puts like a a secret ingredient in everything, and pretty sure that's what it is. He won't tell us because it's a secret, but I think my mom and I both know that it's cinnamon. So yeah, it
I'm
just
in.
brings out everything. I think it's a great addition to basically any meal.
And it's a natural thermogenic, which means it helps you burn more calories and raise your internal temperature.
There you go.
Yeah, it's fancy.
Even better. Yeah. Um, okay. So before I let you go, I want to give you the floor. How can people follow you on social media? I'll give you the floor for. I know that you have a good community up there in Maine of sponsors and things like that. So I'll give you the floor to thank them as well.
Perfect. Okay. So social media wise, I'm not very creative. So my social media names are Glory Watson MMA. We're very direct. So if it's easy to find, I have an Instagram, I have a Facebook. I know I should have other things and I don't because I'm not a good social media poster. Um, Sometimes I post funny things, sometimes I post serious things. A lot of times it's my cat. I'm just not a good poster, but I have a social media. Um, and sponsors, I have this massive, massive list. And to go through and list every single one individually would take me about 10 minutes. So I'm going to do a mass thank you. And then when I'm able to share this video, I'll make sure I tag all of them so they get the appreciation that they deserve. But quick thank you to all of my sponsors. This wouldn't be possible without them. It's something that this is my career, it is my life, and someone that even if I have people that do trades, I have people that give monetary amounts. Those little things really do add up in making my dream possible. And I am just very thankful for everyone I have that supports me through it.
Absolutely. This has been Glory Watson. She's fighting on next Saturday, February 11th, at New England Fights against Hilarie Rose. Glory, thank you so much for your time and best of luck in your fight.
Thank you so much. I hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you. You too.